Woo! Silver's not a real modeler. Fake all-failed forecaster. Sports better. Turned election. Pundit who can't call an election to save his life. So tell me something. How do you get a bounce before a convention? And how does the guy who claims you're getting a bounce before a convention now turn literally 4 or 5 days later and start saying there's no bounce? How does that happen, folks? Who told you how long it takes for a bounce to be or not to be realized in public polling? Who did an entire show on it? And who is a failed sports handicapper turned even worse failure of an election model? You know what I'm saying? Know what I'm cooking? It's got to stop, folks. It's got to stop. And welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them and subscribe and share far and wide. Links are all in the description to the Public Polling Project, which is doing very well. The national one that I'm going to use as an example today, which is extended, by the way, is basically fully funded. I think it is fully funded. I think we got the last funding for it yesterday. So we're, of course, polling in the rears. So that's great. That's done. And we know that's taken care of. We can move on. The Rust Belt poll is being funded. And I will put up the next national poll as well in a bit. Let's just, I know we're coming up on the election pretty closely here, and it probably is wise to put it up sooner rather than later. But I don't want to draw away from the Rust Belt poll. I think that if we can do that rather quickly, then we probably should. All right? Because I can look at the national numbers and I can see what to expect here out of the battleground states. But that being said, this is a particularly difficult polling environment. It's very fortunate that Robert Barnes reminded us that it's probably a good time to re-input the social bias indicators into the surveys because they're popping off. And I'm starting to wonder whether or not this environment's going to get 2020 bad, which is truly a feat, by the way, for media and the political events that we have seen here. I don't remember how Frank from Quite Frankly put it the other day when we were on, but you normally get like you wait a lifetime for a story like this. It's, for, one of these things that these events, that are so meaningful and can change the dynamics of everything. Here we are now. And as Robert said, it's like on a daily basis, we're getting these kind of events. There was, of course, a new indictment, what's called a superseding indictment. We'll probably ask Daniel Street to come on and explain that to us a little bit on Friday. But it really doesn't at this point. It doesn't really matter. I'm telling you, it's not going to shake up the race. The headlines and the opinion pieces are absolutely ludicrous. The vast majority of Americans believe, let's say that, but it is. I mean, there's a truth here, isn't there? They believe that it's a political persecution and total BS. Jack Smith is not even a legally appointed special counsel. We're through this all now. This smacks of desperation. If you are ahead, as they are trying to pretend and claim that Kamala Harris is ahead, you don't tell special counsel Jack Smith to go back and do this again when you know the political blowback could have the inverse effect that you're hoping for. Their only legitimate reason for potentially doing this is that they know that is all BS and that they are likely to lose this election. And you have nothing else to lose. And that is the reality when you consider everything we're going to talk about today with the environment. Also, there is a very good reason why behind closed doors. And every time I do this, and I say every time I make a claim, so let's just start with this one. I've seen Harris's poll in Michigan. I've seen the Harris internal numbers in Pennsylvania, whatever it may be. The public polls are nowhere near what both campaigns show for this race. And the day, for instance, before I went on Steve Gruber, or the day I went on Steve Gruber, their poll was wrapped up in Michigan, and I got it. It was Trump +1. Steve also partaked in the viewing of the poll, and he saw it as well. It was Trump +1. Every schmuck, what's the word? I don't want to even mess it up and make it sound like I'm being using a potty mouth, because it's an actual expression. I just don't want to like screw it up here because it'll wind up coming out wrong. Every schmuck on Twitter's like, you don't have access to their poll. Like, all right, wow, okay. There's Jake Tapper. Sources tell me, and I viewed the polling. This is not the current state of the race. Trump is up a little in Pennsylvania and Michigan. He's down a little in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Okay. Thank you, Jake. Thank you. And there's a reason for that. I always find it funny when the Nate Cohens of the world and all the other election mafia goons, and that's what they are, call everybody else low quality. People with superior records, by the way. In fact, their polling is low quality. When you get into an environment such as this one, it costs more money to get a more accurate result. It costs more money for all data collection modes. Because they're using the most expensive one, doesn't make them high quality. Because they're using the most expensive data collection mode, does not make them more accurate. They are dinosaurs of a bygone era, and their data collection mode is the most susceptible to some of these biases out there that we talk about and discuss all the time. That being said, it's this funny little thing in media and the university world where they want that because they call it, the mafia has declared it, the gold standard, okay, and high quality. So they use it and pay that much more just to be able to be in the club, in the cool club, all right? Yet, when we're in environments such as this one, they're not willing to pay more money to do what is necessary to get more accurate results. That's the truth. They have budgets with their media clients. The universities have their grants, and that's it. They're not going over that when they run into environments like this one where they know they're hitting extremes when it comes to who is and is not more likely to take surveys, who is filling up the quotas, et cetera, et cetera. They know this. Two reasons why they don't adjust for it. One is it almost always will help the Democrat, and they are Democrats. They will use the environment and exploit it. And they will turn a blind eye, turn the whatever it is, in order to give the side that they want to win a more favorable media narrative. They'll raise more money. They'll try to depress the opposition. And it works for them. Because to be honest, is anyone other than me going to hold them accountable for when they're so egregiously wrong? Have you ever seen a poll out of us where we had an 18-point miss? No. Have you ever seen a Trump +13 in Michigan and then he winds up winning by 2 points on our side? No. On this side, we have minimum sample size requirements. We have minimum quota requirements. I'm going to show them to you real soon. If it means we have to spend more money, even on a poll like the Public Polling Project, we will just spend the money. period. And for those of you out there who don't know or maybe need telling this, the public polling project funding is already very low, even though it's gone up over the years. It has to. Telecom agencies with texting, 10 DLC regulations. It's just that the technology for even targeting people online, hiring agents, training agents to know how to interview people correctly, because we don't go to call centers. That's another thing, by the way. Every one of these media university people are going to a call center. Could be one in India. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. Of course, there are a handful of call centers in America, in the United States, that have been around for a long time, or there are some new ones that have popped up, and they're either Republican or they're Democrat. And everyone's like, basically, like Don Smith always said, I know a guy, you got to use that one. Otherwise, you might get blacklisted by somebody, or you just kind of want to be in the cool club. In the case of the left, they want to be in the cool club. So everyone uses the same few call centers. And they're trying to cut costs from that, even though it still costs them roughly $25 per live caller interview. So I wanted to get that out of the way before we start here, because I'm going to read. I had showcased a comment this guy had made. I shared the article on Locals, shared it with Locals. I'm going to read it again. It's not that long. We're going to read it, and then I'm going to do something I always have resisted doing. Why? Proprietary information. But I've been able to do it in a way here where you're just going to see what quotas are, how they work. And then I'm not going to tell you anything beyond certain top level information, because there is a right way and a wrong way to do this. There's a right way and a wrong way to define certain variables that you are making quotas for. And I'm not going to tell people what that is. So you're going to see, for instance, area type, age, gender, certain other geography, but I'm not going to tell you how we define it beyond a very top level understanding. And it's very simple why. I want the New York Times. Now, I know that, for instance, I want all polling to be relatively accurate. Okay? Oops, sorry about that. I want all polls to be relatively accurate. But especially among these arrogant SOBs like them, I also want to be better, of course. So I'll let them think that their interview with the public school librarian in Greene County is the correct way to define certain geographic variables. I'll let them think that they got this right. I'm sorry, I just will. Now, I want the public polling universe to be more accurate, but it doesn't mean I have to I'm constantly pointing people in the right direction, and they are constantly slandering me, right? So my reaction to that is, vafangul. You're not going to get any new information from me. Continue to be wrong. St. Pete is out with a poll today. Anna Paul Luna's trailing the Democrat. Oh, really? Let's take a trip down memory lane. St. Pete is obviously a native pollster of the state of Florida, but you can count the number of people who know how to poll the state of Florida on one hand. And actually, you can't even fill all 5 fingers. You can't. There's myself, there's Travis, there's Robert. That's it. St. Pete. Let's go back. Recent history. Florida gubernatorial election, Gillum +4. Florida senatorial election, Nelson +4. They both lost. Fast forward 2020, Biden +1. St. Pete polls. He lost. Fast forward to 2022. This one's a real kicker. Are you ready? DeSantis +8. Rubio +2. They both won by almost identical margins, and they were nearly 20 points. It doesn't really matter if you're a native or not. Doesn't really matter. It should matter, but it doesn't. Florida has a lot of the same problems as the Midwest. It can actually be compounded by, I would say, more diverse subgroups. And they are not setting quotas for them, they're not even caring as far as I can see. So expect there to be some very tight polls in Florida and expect Donald Trump to win it overwhelmingly. There was just a week and a half ago a poll claiming that Kamala Harris was up like 17 points in Miami-Dade. Has anybody seen the registration data for Miami-Dade? Was it or was it not backed up by the primary vote last week in Miami-Dade? Wait until the low prop Trump voters come out in Miami-Dade. Wait until the new Venezuelans who don't participate in primary elections vote in Miami-Dade. You think she's going to hold that 1-point edge? I think he's going to kick her ass all over the Sunshine State. And you should too. All right, let's read this. And then I'm going to show you a very real example of what he's talking about, starting with interviews that were collected 4 days ago. All right, here we go. Or the quotas of them. You won't see the interviews yet. Public polling has it all wrong. Again, he snagged a little tactic there from the People's Pundit with the again in parentheses, which I did as well today. I have always done this because it's true. It's kind of, for those who don't know the insider joke, it's a throwback to a column I wrote that went on several different websites, including People's Pundit Daily, but several different websites, in which I said the polls got it. I was saying before the election that public polling will be wrong again, and that it was wrong, very wrong in 2014, and we didn't pay attention. And now we're moving into a presidential cycle. We're a few days before a presidential election. And we're about to hit it. There's going to be a big miss. And there was, in fact, a big miss. An even bigger one in 2020 again. But then a few days later, I wrote with the again. Nobody listened again. Somehow all of these eras favor Democrats again. Nate Silver is wrong again. Like, it's a broken record. Feel like I'm beating a dead horse. Again. And obviously, this guy gets it. So let's read it. If the November election was held today, public polling would drastically underestimate Trump's performance and, to a lesser extent, the Republican parties as a whole. I couldn't agree more with that statement, because the understating of Trump's performance will be significant, but Republicans will lag behind him. We will be able to say Republicans did better here, they did better there than the public polls suggested. And a big part of that will be because a lot of these voters that are very difficult to reach, a lot of these lower propensity normie voters who will come out for Donald Trump, they very difficult to poll. They will come out for Trump. Many of them will just check the box with the R. For instance, Kerry Lake will not run 10 points behind Donald Trump in Arizona. They will check the box with the R. However, this is a big however, not all of them will. When Laura and I were in New York and New Jersey last week, we ran through some of the old neighborhoods, which are old Italian, working class, Hispanic, working class neighborhoods. That's where we're from. Urban areas, by the way. And you could see the Trump or bust signs on every freaking lawn. These are areas that loved Democrats like the Cuomos. Right, Laura? Loved some of the old Democratic mayors. Worked for the Democratic bosses. Hell, broke legs for the unions. That's these kind of neighborhoods. And next to the Trump sign, you could see a sign for the Democratic congressional candidate. Big red and white, I'm a Trump or bust voter, which I didn't even know existed until Laura saw the first one and was like, oh my God, it's Trump or bust. It's literally on a sign. Now, some of them had the Republican next to them, and many of these neighborhoods are naturally shifting to the right. However, not all of them will. So, to a lesser extent, Republicans will and are and have been consistently trailing Trump's performance, but they still are likely to be understated. I'm not a poll truther. On the contrary, I'm a Republican campaign consultant and pollster who has consumed thousands of pages of data. My biggest takeaway: the survey environment is plagued by a large response bias problem that low budget public surveys refuse to fix. This is a guy who is not paid to blow smoke up your ass. This is a guy who is not paid to blow smoke up his clients. This guy's entire job behind the scenes, which is very different from what you see on Fox News and MSNBC and all the others from the likes of people in my industry, their job is to blow smoke. Theirs is the opposite. It's to tell them the truth. And on the left and the right, that is what, by and large, happens. There are some pollsters out there that are and consultants who are notoriously yes men. They are notoriously fluffers, where they fluff it and make it look good so their client doesn't get upset with them. It's a large reason I don't do it, because I've run into them before. And that call always becomes a screaming match. This person's BSing you. Here's the truth. Blah, blah, blah. The basic science behind a poll is simple. If we interview 800 Pennsylvania voters, each answer should be within 3 points of the whole universe 95% of the time. For example, if a survey of 800 Pennsylvania voters showed Trump at 48%, then his actual support could be as low as 45% or as high as 51%. What he's trying to explain to you very simply there is a sampling error, or what people refer to typically inaccurately as a margin of error. Now, that only works in the RDD universe, to total randomization. That is, total universe of the principles of randomization. Unfortunately, that is not the world we live in anymore. But he's giving you a ballpark. 800 sample should be a roughly 3% sampling error. And this is what we should expect out of, if Trump is at 48, this is what we should expect 95% of the time. But this foundation assumes, and by the way, tell me if any of this sounds remotely familiar to you. But this foundation assumes every respondent is equally likely to take a given survey, which is false. I remember when I was in the stand in the Arizona election fraud trial, and the prosecutor of Maricopa County, who was on the side of Katie Hobbs, tried to trip me up by getting me on the stand to say I don't believe in the principles of randomization. However, he's a half-wit, and I ran circles around him. So he didn't really understand the content and the topic that he was questioning me on, and I made him look like a simpleton. However, the fact of the matter is, I was trying to explain exactly what Mark is saying here. Long gone are the days where Gallup could walk down the street in a neighborhood, randomly choose houses. Gone are the days when Gallup could call a landline, because everybody had a landline. And that, according to the principles of randomization, people are likely to be represented, should be represented. Everyone's got an equal chance to be represented. So the overall sample, as long as it is adequate enough, should be representative of the population that you are surveying. But that isn't the case anymore. And that's a reality that is an uncomfortable conversation for pollsters to have, because then they have to go on record as basically not believing in the principles of randomization. You can, of course, believe in the principles of randomization while also acknowledging that the environment really isn't 100% conducive to understanding them the way we typically have in the past. So now we need different we have, people are not reached all the same way anymore. So we have to incorporate multiple different modes. And when we do that, what we observe is very simple. Different groups, and again, tell me if this sounds familiar. I have probably said this over 1,000 times in the history of the show. Different people, different groups of people respond to different modes of collection at different rates. Pollsters have two tools to help them adjust for this reality. The first is quotas. Pollsters dictate, and I'm going to show you this after we're done. Pollsters dictate how many individuals of a certain group they want in their survey. I want X percent of men. I want Y percent of women. I want X percent white. I want Y percent black. Nearly every pollster uses quotas for geography, age, and race. This is not controversial. The major debate is about setting quotas for things like education level and, most controversially, political party affiliation. Now, let me stop there and give a brief real-world example. Nate Cohn did a write-up after 2020 saying, if I would have waited for party, my polls would have been more accurate. And here's my response to you. If you have to wait for party after the fact, you suck. Your methodology sucks. You did something wrong. And here's what you really did wrong. Here's your real, because you could, have all these intellectual thought exercises, but here's the bottom line. You don't know what representation means. You don't know what it looks like. You don't know what it looks like. Why? Because you don't know the country. You don't know the people you're surveying. And a poll is a social science part, really statistics. But at the end of the day, you're trying to predict the behavior of a group of people. In any other study or field, could anyone hope to do that if they don't have a good understanding? They don't comprehend that population. You're unaware of the subject you're trying to predict, right? You're unaware of the subject whom which the behavior you're trying to predict. So how on earth could you predict their behavior? It's like saying, I'm going to predict the Super Bowl, but I'm not looking at the stats of any of the teammates. I don't really even understand football, Nate Silver. I don't understand the game. But I don't understand the personality of Tim Brady, that when he's down, he freaking works harder. I don't know a guy like Eli Manning. I don't understand his mind or his heart. So when 5 guys are tugging on his shirt at the end of the game with 5 seconds left to go, does he just give up and fall backward? Or does he throw that freaking Hail Mary 80 yards to win the Super Bowl? You don't understand Eli Manning and how he works. So how the hell could you predict what he's going to do in that situation? If you don't know the voters, if you sit your lazy, privileged ass in a cubicle in New York City at the New York Times, day in, day out, and you don't know anything other than that, how on earth do you think you are going to understand and predict the behavior of the people of Sauk County, Wisconsin? When you call Greene County, Pennsylvania, and you have Biden leading there, if you don't understand what Greene County is and who makes it up, who lives there, what are those people like? What are their values? What drives them? Why do they have those values? Why do they believe those things? Then you might believe it. Okay, I guess Biden's going to carry Greene County. So for all the stuff we're going to talk about here, remember what I just said. You cannot predict the behavior of a group of people you don't know and understand. I don't care how sound or how good you think your modeling is, your methodology is, you will not be able to do it. The argument in favor of quotas relies on historical voter turnout to model future turnout. And this is a little bit different, and I'll show you. This is a little bit different than our philosophy, but he's he's right. I just think that you need to start with modeling the population as it is. And then you have to discern. I'm trying to be careful here, Laura. I don't give up anything. You have to discern what part of that population is going to vote. Because if you wait for party, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for what you think it is right now? Are you waiting on are you waiting it based on historical voter turnout? Because I will tell you right now, I'll give you a little exercise, I'll give you a little homework. Go look at the party affiliation from one presidential cycle to the next, dating back to 1988. And well, I'm just giving you 1988 as an example, but you could keep going. It's just easy. You'll have the data to do it if you do it to 88. It's very simple. No one year looks like the other by party. So if you're conducting polling for 2020 and you wait for party by 2016, you will be wrong. And vice versa, or ditto. If you're polling 2016 and you wait for 2012, as so many people did, guess what? You will be wrong. If you don't know the people you're surveying and you run into a situation where that voter turnout modeling doesn't match what people are telling you, and you don't know these people, so you just immediately dismiss and disbelieve them, you are going to be wrong. That happened twice, back to back, 2016 and 2020. And by the way, just to show you I have a little bit of modesty, in 2012, that happened to us by some degree. I think it was 1.2% in the national generic ballot. Not even, I don't think, but about a point. Republicans won by about 3. We had them up by nearly 4. Some people without Trump on the ballot will not come out no matter what they say. And I should have known that. I did know that. I kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt because in the past when I did not, they made me regret it. Let's not forget the Trump plus 3s in Ohio in 2016, for example. But that, again, the difference there, Trump was on the ballot. Oz could have won that election fairly easily in Pennsylvania. He did not get them out. That's simple. He didn't lose the battle of voter preference. He lost their turnout battle. They did not come out for him. Had they, he would have won. Opponents of restrictive quotas argue that poll may miss changes in group dynamics or the collapse of a particular group. This debate was less of an issue 20 years ago when everyone had landlines and response rates across all groups were fairly high. Today, with extremely low response rates, the response bias has become very pronounced. For example, in a recent internal statewide survey in a large state, he doesn't want to give up who it is for his client and whatnot, what state it was. He's giving you an example of what he's seeing in the field right now, right? Hold on, let me take a sip of water. No matter what I do, my voice is just hoarse all the time. I think I need to switch to tea. I'm serious, Laura. Jam and beans tea helps a lot. That wasn't even a pitch. That's just the truth. That's the tea I drink when I do drink it. All right. For example, in a recent internal statewide survey in a large state, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's Pennsylvania. People with a graduate degree were 5.5 times more likely to answer the survey than those without a degree, while people with a bachelor degree were 3 times more likely. This doesn't take into account a fascinating response bias developing around population density. Sound familiar, guys? Like, is a suburb a suburb? Is every suburb created equal? Or are certain suburbs in metro areas very, very different? The suburbs outside of Philadelphia, they don't look like, act like, think like, or vote at all like the suburbs outside of Pittsburgh. And they are certainly different, for instance, than the suburbs in Luzerne County. Pollsters often divide geography into urban, suburban, and rural segments by population density. In recent surveys, there has been a pronounced drop-off in rural, white, working class responses, with some of the quotas being filled in by suburban and urban white working class voters who are much more likely to be Democratic in orientation. Pause. Barnes and I tell you this all the time. Quinnipiac, a student in Dane County, Wisconsin, who does not yet have a college degree, is not a white working class male on average. He is not the mean white working class male. Marquette, you do the same thing. The liberal, young, white, left-wing privileged population in Milwaukee does not represent the white working class in Polk County, dude. Remember when we looked at the active vote survey last week? How is Harris leading in rural Pennsylvania? Is Kamala Harris going to win the rural vote in Pennsylvania, ladies and gentlemen? Or is that what happened in their survey? I don't even think this is an argument. It's not an argument. If you don't understand what I'm saying, or worse, you disagree, you're wrong. There's a right and wrong answer here. You're wrong. It's real. You're wrong. And you will be a fool on election day. Requiring quotas on education helped to fix the polling challenges that arose in 2016 and made public polls more reliable. And that's not necessarily true. And this is why, yes, we of course do wait for education. You don't need necessarily target education by education. You don't need to set quotas. Targeting, yes, but not setting quotas for them or doing what are called pre-screens, which I'm going to show you in a second. It's not necessary if your geography is correct and your sample sizes are set to specific geographic targets. If you allow your quotas to be filled up in Montgomery for the white working class, you will get screwed. This is why, folks, large sample sizes, which means more money. That is the measure of a high or low quality survey, and then whether or not it's designed and conducted properly. Not whether or not you spent $25, $30 an interview conducting live caller interviews. Or complete. You spend $25 to $30 per complete to conduct live caller interviews. The fact that it's live caller means nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then you have other polls that do have large sample sizes that turn out to be crap, like Morning Consult. That poll has been awful. Democrat +6, final generic vote 2022. If you think that they maybe fixed it by between 20 and now, they did not. All they're doing is increasing the sample sizes among the same groups in the same areas. If they plotted it on a map like we do, I guarantee you would see extreme concentration. Bird's eye view, naked eye, bam, you'd see it right away. Which is a big reason why we do that. We're trying to force people to also live up to our level of transparency. But they can't, many of them. They can't because they're not willing to spend the money. And frankly, it's all helping the party they want to win. This is important because they are themselves subject to their own biases, affirmations, everything, right? So that and some of them are just crooked, unethical, and disgusting, like Fairleigh Dickinson, for instance. We'll get into that in a second. But Kamala Harris's appointment to the Democratic nomination supercharged a key group of voters that can have a big impact on polling wealthy, educated, white Democratic voters. These voters are crawling across broken glass to respond to political surveys. In the past, Top level quotas set for the whole survey might help to mitigate this problem, but many public pollsters cannot afford to set stratification quotas for all the necessary subgroups. And I have gone over stratification in the past with and how it relates to survey design. I didn't show you though, like how I'm going to show you in a second. All right. And honestly, it's still rather top level because I don't want to show people too much. You have to understand, I don't want to give away certain things, but you should get I am going to show enough where you should get the gist of it. All right. Like you'll understand hopefully what we're talking about here. For example, top level quotas will produce a survey group with 43% Democrat, 40% with a college degree, but you really need to set quotas for how many college educated people are in that subgroup, which Democratic subgroup, of course, or you will not fix the response bias problem. This is why Trump does so much better with actual Democrats in places like Hyde County, North Carolina, okay? Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, Beaver County, Pennsylvania, right? This sort of nuanced stratification is very expensive, and most public pollsters aren't willing or able to pony up. With Kamala Harris as the nominee, politically engaged, wealthy, educated white voters are taking up too many spots in Democratic quotas. Let me just stop real quick and show you something. Actually, you don't have to. I will read it to you. In the recent YouGov poll today that was out today, which is a disaster for Kamala Harris, post-convention Harris +2. That's a reverse. It's actually down. Before Harris was up by 3. You can see that Democrats are voting 95-2 for Kamala Harris, while Republicans are only voting 91-4 for Donald Trump. Before this environment developed, it was an actual environment that was more favorable to Donald Trump. And you could see that he had lost like almost none of the almost none of the Republican vote. I guarantee you Donald Trump will not get 2% of the Democratic vote. What happened here with YouGov, and we see it ourselves. We're having trouble ourselves. But what happened here with YouGov, which is really bad, it's very pronounced, is what Mark is describing. Donald Trump is going to get an equal share of crossover vote, if not more than Kamala Harris. I'm telling you, that's going to happen. It is easier to reach the people who are likely to vote for her. End of story. They are doing it. They are conducting the interviews quicker, and they are filling up the quotas. All right, so they are pushing, basically pushing out downscale, lower turnout Democrats who are much more likely to be either undecided or straight up Trump voters. Whereas the college educated Democrat might be a 95 for Harris, as you see in this YouGov poll, a non college one is 88. That 7-point gap matters, and it is not reflected in public polling. I know YouGov is struggling to fill their survey needs. I know it for a fact. And I'm telling you, in their current business predicament, they don't have the ability to set these detailed stratification quotas. They can't do it. They're already going to outside sources because they got too big for their britches. Even if YouGov wanted to be more accurate, they can't be. They're already stretched too thin. Setting these stratification quotas means it's more expensive, but also that you need to be able to reach, you need more panel respondents. You need a larger marketplace. We call them marketplace in this business. YouGov's in the marketplace with me all the time, as is all these other pollsters. Mark Harris, Rasmussen reports. Mark Mitchell, Rasmussen reports. We're all in the marketplace. YouGov used to have its own native panel. They have basically strained it to the point of survey fatigue, and now they are going to others, like where we are. Which helps to explain why they're not Biden +11 this year, or Harris +11. Give them time, though. We'll see. Because there's no way they're not explaining either how much of their sample comes from their native marketplace versus others. They're not explaining that. If they did, it would be tremendously helpful because not all are created equal. Don't take my word for it. Politico is reporting that even Democratic pollsters are admitting that their internals, which means expensive, are much less optimistic than public polling, and they are worried about a blue mirage. That's Politico reported that. Fixing this problem is not easy, nor is it cheap, but one possible solution is to look at vote history. They were called vote. There are several what we call red flag variables. That's what we call them at Big Data Poll. We're called vote is one of them. If, for instance, you look like the New York Times poll and Biden's share of the vote in 20 out of the 2020 sample is 2-3 times more than it actually was, you conducted a shitty poll. If you look at the recalled vote, and as is the case of Florida Atlantic University, Donald Trump's 2020 vote share was only 36%, you conducted a shitty poll. Looking at prior high turnout elections, we can estimate how much of the electorate will be made up of reliable voters who have voted in 100% of the last 4 general elections, otherwise known as 4 out of 4 voters, by the way. For example, in Pennsylvania, we expect 52% of the electorate to be composed of these voters. But polling samples following the Biden-Harris switcheroo show an electorate with 60% plus of these high-frequency voters. This matters because then there's an oddity in party and a vote history right now, and you saw those oddities in the New York Times poll. Tony Fabrizio, the pollster for Trump, he released a press release over it. It was so glaring, so low quality, you couldn't not see it. Right now, support for Harris has a slight correlation with prior vote history, where higher turnout Democrats have a higher incident rate of support for her than lower turnout Democrats. Conversely, and by the way, this happened again in 2016, and that's why the Ohio Valley went overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. It's a big part of it. There were people who straight changed their mind, but it was also the lower turnout ancestral Democratic voter, who, by the way, has a higher incident rate for supporting Trump. Very reliable and consistent voters who tend to be more educated Republicans are less likely to support Trump, while less reliable voters are more likely, which again is why you will see in the YouGov sample, Republicans 91% for Trump, 4% for Harris. So in other words, double the support for Harris among Republicans than you will see for Trump. Again, let me tell you something. That's not going to happen. This also was the case in public polling in 2020. Guess what? It did not happen. Biden did win more Republicans than Trump won Democrats, but they both took like a chunk each. It happened in 2016. Guess what really happened? Trump took more of Hillary's base than she took of his. A lot more. All right. This trend existed previously, but it was supercharged after Biden dropped out and Kamala Harris assumed the Democratic mantle. The result is a blue polling mirage that is more Democrat than Election Day will be. This brings us to the second tool for pollsters, which is weighting a survey. When you weight a survey, you treat interviews unequally to make the data more representative of the expected electorate. For example, if the survey electorate contains only 40% of people without a college degree, but you expect likely turnout at 51%, you can increase the value of the non-college responses and decrease the value of the college responses to accommodate the disparity. We have talked about something called weighting efficiency. Again, at Big Data Poll, we have standards for weighting efficiency. You cannot fall below a certain amount. For instance, in the Marquette survey that was just released a week and a half ago, the weighting efficiency for that kind of a thumbprint, that is not a light thumbprint, would be about 86%. That is not good enough at Big Data Poll. 95% weighting efficiency or greater, or you go back in the field and collect more responses from subgroups that you obviously did not interview enough of. Weighting up will cause the weighting efficiency to drop at a faster rate. Oversampling and then weighting down so you don't overrepresent. Remember the correct use of these terms. Don't say they oversampled Democrats, they undersampled Republicans. That's not the correct term. There's nothing wrong with oversampling a group. The problem is when they are overrepresented. And that is fine if you collected more of a group and you weight them down so that they are representative of the population correctly. For instance, we oversample Hispanics in the state of Florida, but we obviously weight them down to make sure they are representative of the electorate. Why? Because it's a diverse subgroup. They're not monolithic. And he explains here, while weighting can be useful on the margins, it should only be a light thumbprint. It has significant limitations because you're using a very small group to extrapolate to a larger group. Absolutely. Bottom line. And to put that in layman's terms, you don't know something, okay? And you are trying to take what little limited knowledge you have from a smaller group and you are applying it to the larger group to compensate. And when you wait to compensate, you will bust, okay? You're going to bust. The classic example of this is black voters. African Americans tend to be underrepresented in Pennsylvania statewide surveys if quotas are not used. If you wait 50 black interviews with a margin of error of 13.5% to equal 80 interviews, you end up with a lot of risk and an unreliable result. I will tell you right now, and I'm not trying to do this to pick on anybody. Patrick Murray, you at Monmouth, you are notoriously bad and known for this, and you know it. His weighting up in various states in 2016 was egregious. He continues to do it to this day. Weighting up is awful, and when you do it at that much, like 50 to 8, like you're essentially trying to compensate by a factor of 2. I mean, that's terrible. For God's sakes, get MarketSite and look at your weighting efficiency if you don't know how to calculate it on your own. Now, they could get lucky and nail it. You could. That's how statistics works. Broken clocks right twice a day. But your risk factor skyrockets. And then your sampling error is really fake. It's kind of fake. It's not kind of fake. It is. It's misleading. The risk that you are wrong in that subgroup beyond your sampling error gets higher and higher with each drop of the weighting efficiency. Many public polls right now are likely oversampling highly educated Democrats and very high likelihood to turn out voters. They are not capturing the full electorate. And while this may fix itself, and with rising response rates throughout the fall as we approach the election, it is a real problem for the polling industry to address. So, as the fall progresses, keep an eye on public polling because it is likely once again to significantly understate the support for President Trump and Republicans. And I would say at this point, again, I think the first sentence was much more accurate, where it's more likely to understate it for President Trump and to a lesser extent Republicans. But all of the cards are on the table, in my opinion. And let's use another, even more clearly, expression. The handwriting's on the wall. It's on the wall. And you can see it in Florida. You can see it in the Rust Belt. They're always the first ones to tell you got a problem. Always. Even when you're in a good environment, they may give you a problem. And what we're seeing now is textbook to what we saw in 2016 and 2020. And they are basically presenting in the same pattern that we saw in 2020. All the signs are there. Wisconsin is now polling to the left of Pennsylvania and Michigan. Michigan is polling in the middle now again, but like Pennsylvania, Trump looks like the most bullish there. These are response biases. And don't be surprised if Michigan actually looks stronger for Trump. In truth, why am I saying that? Because in truth, Wisconsin voted to the right of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Not once, but twice when this happened. This same thing happened with all the ingredients for a polling miss. Wisconsin ended up polling way to the left and voted to the right of them. Pennsylvania ended up in the middle. And Michigan being the hardest of the two, the heaviest left. In 2016, it was a little bit different. Wisconsin was called quicker. It was a clear victory. Then Pennsylvania took a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, Trump actually got to 0.6. In reality, we would expect Wisconsin and Pennsylvania to be very close, closer, and Michigan to be somewhat to the left. Now, that could actually turn out to be totally upside down, and Trump does the best in Michigan. It's possible because of the way that this realignment is happening. Barnes and I talked about that before, but I got to take a commercial break and can't do that. Come back. We're going to take a little an economic update, and then I'm going to show you these quotas in action real time because, I mean, I don't think here, I'm looking at it right now. They're very top line, age, gender. There's 2 geos. And honestly, I left out race for a reason because we get so detailed into ethnicity. I'm just going to show you some of them. The others I'm hiding. All right. Some things I'm hiding, and I'm doing that so people can't see what we do. All right. But honestly, if you do these others, these basics correctly, and you set a correct minimum sample size, and you have standards, folks, you have standards. Even if it runs you more money, you have standards, because all of these guys and girls should know what to do here. It's not 20, it's not 16. Like, they don't have the excuses anymore. They know what the right thing is to do. They're not doing it intentionally. I'll give Mark that one thing. It's money is certainly a factor. But I would argue they exploit it. They want to exploit the environment to give their preferred political party a narrative edge. It's that simple. They want it to be true. They want to try to make it true, even if it's not true. I've basically lost all respect for these people. When a university pollster releases a push poll, or worse, releases the results of the push, trying to play it off as the actual results of the poll, which, by the way, did not slide by people. Had a wonderful conversation yesterday with someone. People saw what they did. And everybody and that's why you'll see, like The Hill, they did it. They should be ashamed of themselves. This is why you should not cite the fraud, Nate Silver. He's not a polling expert. He's not an election modeler. He's a fraud. He is just a Democratic propaganda piece. That's it. He put that poll in the model. He tweeted, he promoted it. There's no way that that's not intentional. That may be one of the most egregious things I've ever seen all these years. All right. Let's take a real quick break, shall we? I think we should. I think we shall. When we come back, man, I'll just save it. Speaking of fake models, the economy is fair to average. Give me a break. The Fed's going to hike rates. Inflation's going to go to the moon again. 1 million jobs nearly were fake created. Manufacturing revised down. Just since March 2012, I'm talking about. I mean, 2020, March 2024. Excuse me. God, I can't speak. It's a huge number. All right, but let's take a break. Quick word from our friends at Freedom Gold. All right. Listen, I just spouted out a whole bunch of it. And given everything that is happening right now, it is no surprise that people are looking for safer places to invest their money, looking for protection. Stocks are unpredictable. And let's face it, inflation has a very real impact on the value of currencies. And that's why I want to talk to you about Freedom Gold USA. If you've ever thought about investing in gold or silver, or you're just interested in diversifying your portfolio, Freedom Gold USA is definitely a company that you should check out. Look, what I like about them is that they really are all about helping you make smart investment choices in precious metals. And they believe the more you know, the better. They offer you free investment guides, consultations. They give you the information that you need to help you make confident decisions. No pressure, no hard sell. Now, that's one thing. There's a ton of things different, including the guarantee competitive pricing on some of the best quality and purity gold and silver you'll find. You're getting a better deal, a quality deal, and you don't have to worry about extra fees when they offer you free shipping, insurance on all orders. Plus, you might even get some free silver on qualifying purchases, and they'll give you a $500 credit towards opening a gold or silver IRA. That's just the beginning. People who watch People's Pundit, Inside the Numbers, What Are the Odds? Everyone is out there and knows in this industry. If you, I don't want to give any names, but you go to the one, it's a $50,000 commitment, $20,000 commitment, $10,000 commitment. Even Freedom Gold, it's a $5,000 minimum commitment, but not for you guys. And they have this bang up deal that if you haven't, you absolutely need to take advantage of. They will lower that to $500. There's a prize pool. It's very, very, very cool. And you will not hear something like this anywhere else. But the best part, again, is dealing with Freedom Gold is simple and hassle-free. You won't get any pushy sales tactics. They really are just about helping you, Brian and his team, just helping you reach your financial goals in a way that works for you. So if you want to learn more, I recommend giving Freedom Gold a call, 888-279-3592, 888-279-3592. The number's on the screen. That is just for us, but it wouldn't hurt to tell them, hey, the People's Pundit sent me. You could also go check out their website at freedomgoldusa.com/rich. freedomgoldusa.com/rich. Go there, find out about the latest special offers, see what kind of deals you may qualify for. I'll give you that number again one more time, 888-279-3592. The number's on the screen. It's in the description. So is the link to the website. Don't wait. Give them a call today and secure your financial future. All right. Speaking of which, I want to talk about the economy a little bit. All right. And to do so, it's great to have a face to the name. We were just talking about Freedom Gold. We have Paul Cox here from Freedom Gold, which I'm super excited to talk to you, Paul. Listen, first of all, welcome to Inside the Numbers.
Glad to be here.
I want to ask you about this Fed decision coming up. Obviously, you guys believe in protection with currency, so you watch this stuff like a hawk. Do you think the Fed waited long enough here, Paul, before they decided to have this conversation about cutting rates again? I mean, it's not even like we got it under control yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Band-Aid. You can't, it's ineffective at this point. And I think it's really smoke and mirrors to hopefully, propel the current government into a fair, and a real chance in November.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that if the economy reflected the true numbers, it would be a shoo-in for Trump, and the Democratic Party wouldn't have even a foot to stand on. It's really bad out there. I mean, what people don't hear, and it's really, really stark. I mean, you got household income that has fallen 9.1% since 2020. You got credit card debt that's the highest it's ever been in history.
Yeah.
It's surpassed $1 trillion. And the average rate on that interest on those credit cards It's over 20%. This is financially crippling millions of people. You know, the delinquency rates are unprecedented as well. You know,
But meanwhile, Paul, Wall Street's just making money hand over fist. Like if you listen to these new, I mean, it's all agenda driven now, even financial reporting, which is so sad to me because I remember before the years, this is years ago, folks. I don't want to date myself, but when I was I loved Wall Street for a while. There was a time where I enjoyed what I did, and I liked the feeling of a crisp Wall Street Journal in my hand in the morning with a cup of coffee, and I love to get the start and wait to look at the markets and see what was going on, to hear the buzz. I loved the sound of the trading floor. I just did. And if you listen, but we used to be able to trust those numbers. You were just saying, like, if it really reflected it, we used to be able to trust those numbers back then. It never dawned on you sitting in the office, like, these numbers may not be real. These it just didn't. It was totally different world back then. And now even the financial reporting is being corrupted. And I was listening to a news break in the car yesterday, and they're, going on about the Dow, the new high. Wall Street's just trading and making money off of what they call dumb money, by the way. They're just making money off the average person, while the average person is dealing with the reality that you just brought up. And most people just have, like, what, 401ks that they're waiting, to retire with, stocks. And let me ask you this, what I guess I'm trying to get to. Has there ever been a time where the stock market is so not representative of the actual economy than today?
I don't think so. A lot of it's due to, the chickens coming home to roost, from 2008, all the printing, TARP, TALF, Operation Twist, QE1, 2, and 3. A lot of people think that all that printing kind of manifests real time. It's never real time. It's, kind of a like an exponential kind of cycling, and it's hit. And really, what triggered it was in 2020, the COVID, episode. And you mentioned the 401k is very, very important for everybody's, kind of financial optic, if you will, when every day when they look at their numbers. There's Bank of America said that there's the highest rate of emergency withdrawals that they've ever had in history. This is, unbelievable. And
I guess too, you're talking about the Fed. Every presidential election, it's like both sides rail against the Fed. This time, one side isn't at all. And I think it's, when you see the endorsement of Robert Kennedy, of former President Trump, and he's supported by people who have been a breath of fresh air when it came to certain financial issues, like Vivek Ramaswamy, right? There's so many of these other people. There's only one side that views the Fed as a problem. And meanwhile, by the way, the Dow skyrocketing and the Fed's talking about cutting rates, they're buying gold like crazy. So, can these people ever get under control? I mean, it's like they're supposed to be autonomous. Is there any way? And we hear promises from politicians every year, but what could be done? Like, what realistically could be done?
You just hit it right on the nail on the head. Why would the central bank, and this is unprecedented, the first 3 quarters of this year, central bank purchased 1,000 tons of gold, whereas over the past 10 years, no more than 100 per year. They don't do that unless there's a significant reason that they're foreseeing. The dollar is under unbelievable pressure right now. You factor in the BRICS nations, and their agreed intra-BRIC exchange of their own currencies, and maybe coming up with a basket of currencies that they trade, and they're already doing it. The UAE has said that they're not going to use dollars anymore. Egypt purchasing crude with their own currencies. I think the yuan actually. And this is alarming. And you mentioned the media's sources. God forbid they really give people a heads up about what's really happening right now. People would be running to the banks, pulling the money out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there would
Yeah.
be there could be panic, and I'm not saying it would be irresponsible to report it because there could be panic. People should know; it's their right to know. And meanwhile, I had a laugh less than a week ago. You have Mark Cuban, who is clearly a liberal and always supports liberal politicians, but he tweeted a story, and the story is completely misleading. And what it basically said was last year, the dollar was used in international transactions more than any other year in history at a rate at high. But what they didn't mention was what you just mentioned, because the only thing that really matters is the dollar's role, the petrodollar is its role in international purchases and the selling of crude. And that's what allows us to have the debt size that we have. For people at home who don't know that, that's the only thing that allows us to get away with this right now. And that is not the case. So it was a very, very misleading story. And I guess, do you view this the same way? The petrodollar is the basis for it all. And
Of course.
yeah. And
Of course.
I don't understand what there's nothing else to replace it. Right.
Every country's
for us.
ticket item. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's the kiss of death for the US dollar. If the entire, the BRICS nations are now at 24 separate countries. And I just, one of my colleagues showed me something this morning that 154 countries have agreed to a payment system that would, sans US dollar, and this is scary. What people don't know right now, and you can see it in the CPI, it's reflected it pretty aggressively over the past 4 years. We've lost 20% of our purchasing power since 2020. Actually, it's 20.9, which means you need $1,209 to purchase what you could purchase for $1,000 in 2020. Here's the scary thing. And those numbers you can find on the United States government's Bureau of Statistics, the labor inflation calculator, labor board inflation calculator. Here's the scary part. Go to 2004, 20 years ago, punch in $1,000. Today you would need 1,650 to purchase what you could purchase for $1,000 in 2004. But think of it. I don't think you're catching the scary part. So 65%, we've lost 65% of our purchasing power over the past 20 years. But in the last 4 years, we've lost 20. It's ratcheting up.
It's accelerating.
Right? That 20-year kind of metric may become 10. Imagine losing 65% of your purchasing power in 10 years. We're on course to do that. This is what people don't know. They fall into that, that gauzy place of, it's a little more. And then at the end of the year, they realize, I can't save that $10,000 that I used to. And it's the, and I do believe in kind of segueing back to the BRICS and their, kind of alienating the dollar. That will be the kiss of death for the U.S. dollar unless something is done. I don't. The United States has played in the last 4 years. The Biden, White House has played a very, very particular game with the dollar. They've used the dollar as this as like a financial weapon. Think about it. They've sanctions against China, sanctions against Russia, sanctions against China for assisting Russia in this war they have going on. They've sanctioned North Korea, Cuba, Syria, Venezuela, Iran. At some point, these countries are going to say, why trade the dollar?
Yeah.
If it's only going to lead to, the weaponization against them of that particular currency.
That's such a good point.
Yeah, and it's frightening. I have a 13-year-old, and I'm very frightened about the world that she's going to be growing up in. It's
your daughter's the same age as mine. I got an older son. He's just turned 15, but we have what we call lovingly, of course, our midlife crisis baby. And he's 5 and he just started kindergarten, and we walked him in on Monday, and I don't know if normal people or everyday people think about this stuff like I guess you do and I do. I imagine they do, and it's like I'm walking him in there, I'm thinking to myself, look at what has happened in the period between my son being 15 and going into a kindergarten class for the first time, like which I remember like it was yesterday, to today and then now. So things have gotten so bad and so off track. And I really fear like there's a calamity that they're going to have to deal with, that unfortunately I'll probably be too old to help them with, maybe not. Maybe it'll be at this rate, like you said, it's accelerating. Maybe not. Maybe it's a lot sooner than people think. And I'm a pollster. I talk to people and get their opinion. I'm not, I don't do the Wall Street thing anymore, but I'm curious, like, because you similarly talk to people when your clients call, when people call, ask you about, Freedom Gold. You hear an added level of like anxiety from people, like, or I mean, are they calling to make a business decision, a retirement decision, or do you feel like there's like something different now, like in today, like in this era, there's something different?
Yeah, they're calling with this same kind of anxiety and concern. People see, they can feel, they see it. And you mentioned the sources of truth. Your listener base, they're so smart, and as you are, and thank God for sources such as yourself.
I appreciate that.
It's the only way we can get the truth. But I'd say 50% of the people out there don't know to listen to these alternative sources, and they're still looking at the NBC, CBS, and they're
it is about that. It is
being whitewashed, and it's frightening. And we do our best to, we spend a lot of time with people. It's not about like a wham bam, thank you, ma'am. We make sure that it's that they understand, and they're doing this for the right reason. And it's people are concerned. They're very worried, and they know that they have they're outliving their monies in some regards. That it's not going to last, unless they do something smart.
Yeah, I worry about that every day myself. Every day, every single day, especially as I get older, as everyone does, and I'm starting to, because I was much younger dealing with people in my situation. Now it's just I feel like things were different. I'm like I'm rewinding in my mind because pre-financial crisis and around the 06 era, 07, it was just like, especially 06, it was really just about making money, and people would go and open an account, right? I mean, if you're a different age, you have different goals, of course, but People traded currencies, they traded stocks, they had their mutual funds, or whatever they thought they could to diversify. And it was more about making money. And I feel like now it's not just that. It's like a trepidation, and it's more about security, even with younger people who who back then would be much more aggressive than a client who was like my age, right? I mean, you're still doing kind of like a growth approach. It's just a less aggressive growth approach, because you're starting to think about 20 years from now. Maybe you need to make sure you have enough. I feel like I'm hearing people who are even younger, they have so fewer opportunities than we did. If the Fed does lower the rates, then perhaps the housing market will become open to them again, or at least some of them. But then they're going to get whacked at the grocery store. They're going to get whacked at the gas pump. I mean, there's almost no win for these people. They have to take a different approach than we did, growing up. I mean, that's really the way it comes down to it.
Right. You bring up the 20-year forecast, if you will.
Yeah.
Think about the metric we were talking about, the 65% loss of purchasing power over the past 20 years. Think about if 20 years ago, gold was $300 an ounce. So maybe you had that $1,000, you purchased
I hear Laura now.
You purchased an ounce of gold and you put it away. Today it's worth $2,500. So that's $700 in 2020. But you have that $2,500. That's what gold does. It protects your purchasing power.
Yeah,
over the period of time.
I got it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I'm
sorry.
No,
I was going to say it's not a like Las Vegas or like a get rich quick. No, it's like almost acts like an insurance, if you will, for your purchasing power. And these are cycles. The cycle between 1971 and 1980, gold 24 times its value in price up. By the way, 33, 71, and 2008, those three periods, central banks loaded up with physical.
That's right.
31, in 1933, they revaluated it 70% up. Okay. Between 71 and 1980, they 24 times its value.
Seeing a pattern here, folks.
Right.
Seeing a pattern here.
2008, think about it. Well, let's just say from 2004 to 2012, from $300 to $1,900.
Yeah.
And this was coupled with central bank purchasing. Also at the time, hedge fund purchasing.
That's right. They had them.
Yeah. These behemoth, entities that were
American funds, Templeton, they all did it,
Right. And now central banks in unison are buying at an unprecedented rate. I also point out that the physical ownership in on Main Street, like what we do, helping your average person, I believe it's eventually going to be, you're going to lose the ability to buy.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because in prepping for our conversation, I was going to ask you. They came after crypto. There's a war on cash. Like eventually, there's going to be a point where they're not even going to want you to do this. And if the central banks are not, I don't want to say put under control. I mean, but they are currently out of control and just accountable to nobody. They're buying at this rate. Paul, I see no world in where they allow people to continue to do this individually. I just don't see. Maybe even institutions, by the way. I'm sorry, you can't own physical gold anymore either. We need all of that. And not just gold. A lot of other stuff too, so
it's not for central banks, endowments. University of Texas Endowment is one of the largest holders of physical gold in history, as a entity outside of a bank, and look, it's either going to become too expensive or not there for Main Street. And
Yeah.
You know, you
That's always
can't.
the first step, pricing you out. That's always the first step.
That's right. That's right. And you know, in 2019, there were these the Basel III meetings or accords, and this is fascinating. They, prior to 2019, you have the gold that's underlying, say, paper like GLD, the ETFs, was kind of on par with physical gold. In 2019, they separated it where physical gold, and they're allowing banks to hold physical gold as capitalization for loans outstanding, and potentially to offset this, which we haven't talked about it yet, is $1.5 trillion in, in commercial property CDOs, collateralized debt obligations that are rolling over. These are 5, 7, and 10-year notes that have been kicked down the road by the central bank, giving them, leash. They're coming due in a unbelievable interest rate environment. Commercial property, mortgage-backed securities. I believe that the allowing banks, retail banks, and major banks to own gold as a level one. What do they call it? It's a uh, it's a level one asset, and they've moved like GLD and paper gold to level three. And essentially, in that level one status, banks and the similar entities, have an impetus to pull it in and actually own it and account for some of their outstanding liabilities.
Well, they have this template where they could easily follow the same playbook, the same path. With the same thing with real estate, right? You had REITs, and then there's now a whole bunch of large investors, institutions that gobble up real estate. During I remember before rates went to the moon, even around by me, rental properties, just being gobbled up by big companies. You couldn't purchase the house fast enough. You just couldn't, like a normal
Right.
person. The house was on the market so uh, for such a short period of time. These companies are ready to go. They're ready to fire off, make their offer, whereas an individual buyer would have to go through the normal process, getting their pre-approval letters, right? Making an offer, and that you just could not compete. So many of these properties around here got gobbled up. And I mean, they're going to be in institution hands for a long time, aren't they? I mean, how long is it going to take for that? If right? So they price them out, make sure that they're not the ones who are gathering these assets, and then eventually it just becomes unobtainable in some cases. And that's like the market we're in now at housing. It's really awful. I'll tell you this though, before I let you go, it's a funny thing. One of the biggest regrets, I guess, in like my financial history I've ever made, and my wife, it's not some, she's not some like, she doesn't follow the markets, even back then, she doesn't, she just has good instincts. And I was young, I was aggressive, and this is why I'm telling the story, one, so you could have a laugh, but also two, for younger people who are listening, that you're told to take a certain path, when you're preparing, getting older. And honestly, I was being aggressive, like you should be in your 20s and in your 30s, and that's fine. But I didn't have currency holdings the way I should have. I would come home from work and before the financial crisis, and I would complain that was just about to hit the fan. But we had done so well on on IPOs and other things, which is just crazy. You can pop, like you said, it's really protection for a while. Whereas I was looking for the quick buck, Paul. I was aggressive looking for the quick buck, and we had done so well on like Taser International and the stock split. So my mind was not in the right place. And my wife, when I was coming home saying I don't like these numbers with Lehman, and now they want you to push these bonds out, so I was like coming home and complaining to my wife about these issues. I don't think this is solvent. I'm young. These older guys have much more confidence in the system than I have. I'm worried here. I'm like, Laura, I'm worried this could go bad for us. There are these things called subprimes. I'm trying to explain it to her, and she's like, why do we own such little gold? Like, you need to not, go in that deal. Don't do that deal. Go buy more gold. And I did buy a little bit more, but I did not buy anywhere near what she was telling me to buy. I think gold was $600 at the time or something like that. It was so it ended up not only being the better deal and the better way to make money, but I would still hold it to this day, so it's got to be the biggest regret, the worst financial decision.
That's what most listen. There's no coincidence that most people. I remember there was back in 2005 or 6.
Yeah, it was 6, and roughly, I think late.
Yeah, 6, I remember there was a guy walking around. It was like kind of the nascent YouTube type of online thing. He was going around with a 1 ounce $50 gold piece. At the time, I think it was $500 or $600 an ounce.
Right.
He was going around and he was saying, "Hey, if you give me $50, I'll give this to you." And across the board, everyone was like, "Why am I going to give you $50 for that?" Like they had no idea. It's it's by design. To a certain extent, it's by design. I mean, how else can they depeg the dollar in 71 like they did with the to gold, depeg it, and not create a kind of a narrative of like, it's a relic, it's you get no dividends and no interest, and it's the biggest mistake. It's portable real estate. You think it is? Do you think that it's there's an infinite amount of it?
That's right.
Very tight. The physical ownership of gold. I mean, it's no joke that 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools could be filled up with all the gold that's ever been minted or mined. This is ridiculous. And guess who's buying? China, India, Russia. Their citizens buy at an unbelievable rate. In fact, there was an article not too long ago in the Wall Street Journal that said Chinese housewives are putting a dent in world supply. I was like, what the heck is this? And I read it, and it goes into describe that China, India, Russia, these are countries that are basically in the midst of their industrial revolutions to a certain degree, maybe not so much Russia, but they have middle classes for the first time in history. This author went on to say that Chinese citizens saves 38% of their income, and their wives that are home getting that paycheck or whatever are buying gold to kind of, because they know, its value. She also mentioned that the average U.S. citizen saves -2% of their income. So we're, people have to wake up. This is a call to action. It really is. I mean, it's going to get uncomfortable soon.
Yeah. Which is tragic. It didn't have to be this way. It didn't. Hope. I'd like to say it's preventable. I just feel like we're beyond the point. And as far as the debt goes, I feel like we're beyond the point of where we could have, implemented reasonable budget reforms and growth, coupled with growth. And we could have set a long-term plan to avoid some kind of debt bomb. I think that those days are over. I don't mean to be a doomer. The math doesn't work anymore, Paul. And if you're going to kill the petrodollar, then we really have no chance to make it to that point, from point A to point B. Actually, we're well beyond point A now, and I don't know what point we're headed to. We'll tell you just to stress something that you said. it is like land. God's not making any more of it, and unless I'm unaware of the news story where the Philosopher's Stone was real, we're not. It's not gonna. That's not gonna change. Anytime soon. So yeah, but I would love it if you'd come on like once a month and we can talk about the CPI and everything,
Love it.
all this stuff. I would love that.
Love it.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
need.
I watch you, and I read your the narrative from your listeners. Smart across the board. They're very, very smart. And I think typically in military, the chain of command, it's whatever that it always you follow that chain, and so I think this is your hallmark. You're very right on with your and I appreciate that, and I think everybody should.
I appreciate you saying that, because I gotta tell you, it gets frustrating after a while. You always feel like you're kind of like against a wave of it's like everyone's trying to navigate this sea of misinformation, and it's sometimes the few of us out there, and I think it's a growing number, but that try to give people kind of like the lighthouse, like over here,
Right.
it can get very frustrating sometimes. So I appreciate the comments like that. I mean a lot. They really do.
You bet.
And, I'll tell people where to go. But again, Paul, thanks for coming on.
Also,
Really appreciate it.
I wanted to tell you, we do have an exclusive for the People's Pundit.
Yeah, tell
listeners.
people about that, because you're probably better at it than I am.
And anybody who calls in,
I told Laura to do it.
Say it again.
I just told Laura to do it. I just
Yeah,
texted. Yeah.
So anybody that calls in and requests a free investor's guide or a free consultation, and if you're eager to learn, we'll give you a tutorial, if you will, but you'll be automatically entered into a drawing for a chance to win some free silver.
Yeah.
No purchase required. In fact, you have 2 winners in your listener base already. And can I say their names?
Oh, I would love that. I did tell Laura to tell you guys, don't put us in the pool. Just take the offer, take the advantage of the offer, but don't put us in the pool. Make sure we don't want to win. We want the listeners to win.
You have two winners of the silver package, and that's a Chris Zimmerer in South Carolina.
Whoa.
Okay. And then a Jimmy Harper in Georgia.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we'll put a little box together, and it's some 99.999% pure, silver. And we didn't even talk about silver. Silver is one of the most undervalued.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But I know you probably have to get going here. But yeah, they can, look at the number. It's 888-279-3592, Freedom Gold USA, freedomgold.com, USA.com, excuse me. And look, we're here to to guide people and help them out.
That makes me overjoyed, and we should, I'm so glad you did that. But people should definitely give you guys a call over there. You're great. You guys are all great, and I would love if you come back. I mean, if we did this once a month and talked about this would be very good. I'd really appreciate it. I would love it. So you're welcome back.
Absolutely.
And I'll see you then, everybody. Paul Cox, Freedom Gold USA. Thanks, Paul.
All right. Take care, man.
Take care.
You got it. Take care.
Well, that was great, you guys. See the giveaways. That's great. Congratulations to you guys out there who did who did win that. That's fantastic. Let me know when you get the box. Give us a heads up. Give us a little thing in there. That's cool. And you're lucky. I mean, super, super lucky. Everything he said is just spot on there. I don't mean to be a doomer. I just got to tell you, like, the math isn't there. I guess you would need somebody. And this is, it's not advocacy. It's just the truth. This is why somebody like Donald Trump, being such a different kind of president, I don't see how you avoid this colossal disaster using the status quo or using people who are members of the ruling class. Ned Ryan said something in Steve Cortez's new documentary about Trump being the most persecuted person on the planet, which is separate. But he said something that was very much on par with what I heard Don King say once, both on the interview and then separately. He was stepping aside, talking to him. Really, actually smart guy. Trump is a class traitor. That's how they view him. That's why it's one of the reasons why the hate has got so much. I really feel like the only way you can save the system from itself is to be somebody who's so much in like a violator of it. They just hate him, so he's not going to play by the same rules, because the days of going to the CBO and saying, how much longer do we got? What do you think? Are over. And the weakening of the concept of the petrodollar is going to precipitate that. And I'm sorry, but it's true. If we were to rewind the clock to 2018 and we were to look at the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the revenue projections from the CBO, which of course they were wrong, they would later revise and say, nope, we were wrong. Actually, more revenue is going to the Treasury. And by the way, the Social Security and Medicare, it's offsetting the drain from that. Still needed to deal with defense, which Trump didn't do. It's a different story, but those are the primary drivers of our debt. And that was the time, growing at 3+%, not this 3%. This is bogus growth. We're still trying to recoup stuff. But it's not real growth in the way that we saw a sustainable growth under Donald Trump, and one that benefited everybody because it becoming a more goods producing, the goods producing economy was getting bigger. Service sector was, not, I wouldn't say shrinking. It's just the pie was getting bigger, and that relative slice of the pie for goods producing was getting bigger. Don't think of the economy in absolute terms. That's the way a leftist thinks about it, and they are wrong. It is a relative system where the pie can shrink, the pie can get bigger. And just because someone's taking a larger slice of it does not mean they're hurting someone else. That's not the way it works. And the goods producing sector was getting larger. Wages were growing for people. And as they were, people were able to make smarter financial decisions. So it's not just the nation overall, but it's also the people who are getting more solvent. And that was the time. Coupled with the renegotiation of the trade deals, trade deficits improving, and then phase 2 we were in with the Chinese, phase 2. And at the end of that tunnel, we would have had a much more favorable arrangement, and it would have benefited the United States. I don't feel like, it's just a fact. That was the time to set a better plan. And unfortunately, Republicans are fake budget cutters, and they didn't do it when Trump wanted to do it. Instead, they gave him an omnibus bill before the midterms, and he wanted to veto it. He was anguished over signing that bill. He eventually did. I don't think he would do things like that again, but it would take somebody like what Paul was saying, like, to go and basically strong arm people, weaken bricks the hard knocks way. And that's not going to happen with the ruling class. They're never going to do that. They're going to play these little games like Paul brought up. And those games, unfortunately, are going to come at the expense of you and I, and our children. Paul's got a 13-year-old daughter. His daughter's exactly my age. My daughter's age, excuse me. You know what I mean? And it's not a joke. It's not. People think it's like some ethereal, problem or issue. It's not. It will be real, all too real one day. So I don't mean to doom, but we got to be honest here. Donald Trump wins the election. How much of that ship can he right being the executive? Because I wouldn't count on Republicans doing the right thing from life. I'm sorry. The last time they even thought of balancing a budget was the era of Newt Gingrich. Back then, John Kasich was conservative and the chairman of the budget committee. Those things are very different now. All right, let's talk about those quotas we were talking about with Mark. All right. So here we go. Here is the back end of one of the marketplaces. Here is and I'll show you the date just so you know. These interviews started to collect on August 24th. See it? Okay. So right here, what am I doing? It's a complete goal of overall 3,000, right? Which is for us now a general rule of thumb. We even for the Four Freedoms poll, we released about 2,000 and change interviews, but the goal, the collection goal was give or take 2,500, 3,000. Really, for us, for the public polling project, and for if Big Data Poll was to just do a public survey nationally without sponsorship, and we just paid for it on our own, not the public polling project, it would be 3,000 as a goal. Think it's can be, if you collect and all these groups are represented adequately, then you can do it. But I prefer 3,000. Okay, so out of that, you're basically saying men 47, women 53, or you could do 48, 52. That's defendable, right? But men tend to say that they're more certain to vote than women, so we like to collect. But the truth is, the electorate is typically more closely associated with like 40%, 47%. So we like to collect a lot more. Now, we may look at it and say, we do need more men, and you can change it as you go. You can adjust. You may also notice that we have a much different age target. And again, some of this stuff is top line because you're going to look at some of the region stuff. I'll give you some basic understanding of how these are defined. Age is super simple, right? I mean, everyone knows gender, super simple. But some of them, as we go scroll down, are going to get a little bit, well, how do you define that, Rich? And that I don't really want to give away. Not fully anyway, because that's up to the pollster to learn that on their own. And I'm not going to give them any information, right? I'm constantly saying, look out for this red flag. Look out for that red flag. That's about it. That's all they need. That's all they're getting. All right. So 18 to 24 as a subgroup instead of just 35 below, 30 below, 18 to 24, 25 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 64, and then we can do 65 and above. Now, within that 65 and above, you have got to look at the difference between 65 to 74 and 75 to 100. Very much so when you're looking at gender and area. That is very, very important. That's about as deep as I'm going here. Now, I'll just show you some other stuff here. Regional definitions are defined by more granular understandings, right? So the state, obviously, right? What defines the state? At the end of the day, this is the one thing I will tell people. The same goes for area. The same goes for census division. You cannot rely on somebody telling you the truth. You cannot rely on someone telling you what their understanding of an urban area is or a suburban area. We've been through this before, right, folks? And when you're looking at those suburbs, which I'm not showing you this, it is what it is. You better make sure that your suburban definition is done at some granular level where you're able to ensure that metro burbs will not take up the entire sample. I gave you an example of competing burbs, okay? By me. Morehead City is affluent, it's wealthy, it's Trump plus 35, okay? Why? Then it's a burb. Actually, downtown, some may even consider it by new census definition an urban area. And Trump carries it overwhelmingly. There are rich white women there. There are highly educated white women there. Yet it's still Trump plus 35. Is it a metro suburb? No, it's not. That matters. That's as far as I'm going with that, okay? But that matters. If you treat every freaking suburb like it's Delaware County, you're going to have a problem. All right. Okay. Now there's something else. I got to go up and show you the headers. So there's something else I can tell you about. Pending meanings in the field, but I don't have a field end date. And that's because, wrong smoker. Where's my other smoker? That's because I don't know how others do trackers. We just clone and keep going. All right. So that data will later be appended. All right. And you can see the conversion rates here. I'm going to explain this all to you. We have 9 minutes, a little less basically, but we have plenty. I just want to show you, like, give you an idea of the workflow, of the project flow, right? Right. So how does this actually happen in practice? And what does this mean? And how do you do it? And then how could it go wrong? Just give me 1 sec. Speaking of wrong, this show will go very wrong if I try to go 2 hours without a vape. I'm getting so much better, though. I didn't even vape at all overnight. I'm doing so much better. Of course, it would help if the damn thing wasn't malfunctioning. All right. It didn't take 3 tries. All right. All right. So you said we have a complete skull. And then you have a quota. And then you have a little thing, which is very important to the right of that, called a pre-screen. Now, you can choose, let's say one of these quotas are filled. And I feel good with how many 18 to 24 females we have, right? And vice versa, or whatever. You could say males, no matter. And it looks pretty decent. All in all, looks pretty representative. I could continue to collect them if I wanted to overrepresent them. All right. However, most of the time we'll go through the pre-screen, and if we're really good on solid on a group, that'll be it. And part of that is conversion rate. All right. So that's why some of those conversion rates fluctuate a little bit. You will notice that there is a higher conversion rate for men than there is for females. That is because educated females want to take the survey, and they will constantly want to take the survey. At some point, they will have to fail the pre-screen. Okay? At some point, you will have to say, I'm done. I'm done. You may notice that there is absolutely, oh my God, that can't be true. That Bing is somebody telling me that ActiVote has a tied race in Michigan where Harris is actually up by 0.2, but Trump is winning independents by 56 points. That can't be right. You have to have misread that crosstab. Again, small sample sizes will get you in trouble, and you can get lucky, but it will get you in trouble. You may come out with a subgroup that Trump is ahead by 56 points. He's saying he is not wrong. It's right. He's listening. 400 sample size. Oh my God, brother. Oh God. The state of Michigan should at least have 800 to get to a sampling error closer to 3%. And as you know, we like sample sizes of 1,000, 1,200 in Michigan. My God. Oh my God. I don't even know what to say with that. But anyway, you will notice that there are some groups, 50 to 64, they're a pain to get. You can see that in the pre-screen numbers. All right. They don't want to take the survey as much. The conversion rate is lower. And even though they're more difficult to reach. And honestly, if we looked at their abandoned rate, you would see that they are exiting before the interviewer is done with the interview, or the online survey is done, whatever mode you're doing. All right. That is going to happen. This, by the way, is an online component. Okay. No, you're kidding me. He sent it to me. You're shitting me, dude. Okay, I got to stop for a second and read you these numbers, guys, because this is an actual perfect example. All right, by the way, their 18 to 29 was 31% of the sample, and they weighted it down to 15%. That is outrageous. And they have Harris winning 18 to 29, 70 to 30. All right, their 30 to 49 was 42% of the raw, and they weighted it down to 30, and then that vote is tied. The 50 to 64 we were just talking about was only 21% of the raw data, and they weighted it up to 25. Trump is winning it 67 to 33. Do you see how easy it is to have a polling miss? Get this, I ain't done. 65 plus was 7% of the raw, and they weighted it up to 30%. Folks, their weighting efficiency must be 45%. This is awful. They literally weighted one gender from 36% to 52%, weighted down men 64 to 48. Democrats are 64% of the sample, of the raw sample. I'm not joking. He sent it to me. He's not bullshitting. Republicans were 20% of the raw sample, and they weighted it to 55% Democrat, 30% Republican, and only 15% independent. First of all, there are more independents in the state of Michigan than that. That's the state of Pennsylvania you must be thinking about, where it's only 15 to 18% independent. Jesus. Lord. Lord. Forgive them. They know not what they do. I will not doubt you again, bro. They have the high school vote going 57 to 43 for Kamala Harris, and the bachelor degree or higher going for Trump 56 to 44. They have Trump winning independents 78 to 22. The white vote by 6. There is no ethnicity outside of the white vote, which means they got some crazy number for black voters. Trump's probably carrying 45% of the black vote. Lord! This is so bad. But thank you for sending that, because you're absolutely making my point, aren't you? You could not have sent that at a better time. You could not have sent that at a better time. What area type fell shy of its quota here? Does anybody know? Can you see? Let's see if you guys, I'm not giving you homework or anything, but perhaps you can give me a little bit. It's just outrageous. It's totally ridiculous. Somebody in the chat tell me, by looking at the number, which area type, not region, area type, gave us an issue. Now, of course, you keep going and we'll get it until it's done. And we do that. I mean, again, it is a tracker, so you just clone it and keep going. You clone the quotas and you keep going. All right. The answer is rural. The suburbs came in hot and heavy. You got to start turning people away. Look at that pre-screen. Look at that pre-screen. Graveyards. The pre-screen for suburban was just outrageous. And for those who can't see, the ones that are shy on their quota are rural 50 to 64-year-olds, which happens to be a very heavily Trump favored vote. This will happen over and over and over and over and over. If you're doing the phone component, you will see it over and over and over. Now, there are different groups, again, that respond in different modes at different rates. So the phone component will have issues with other specific subgroups. And if you're texting, if you're doing online texting to online, for instance, you will have issues with other groups. But here's the kicker. They will all be overlapping demographics. Let's say maybe on one component, you're having a difficult time reaching black men under the age of 45, right? Or you'll have a difficult time reaching working class whites that are overlapping age 40 to 49. So there'll be overlap. And here's the biggest kicker of it all. And the most important thing to remember. None of them will be Democratic leaning constituencies. You will not have a problem collecting interviews for Democratic leaning constituencies. When you have a quota that fills and fills quickly, which we have techniques which we use to prevent that, but I'm not getting into that. But it still happens. It just minimizes. All we can do is minimize it. We can't eradicate it. The only way to truly eradicate it is to recruit a panel that is separate, like we did in 16, and then not do new interviews we did in 16. Instead of it being 25 to 33% repeat interviews, you have a massive panel, a controlled group, and you just re-interview them every week. But even then, even when they agree to do that and participate in a project like that, you're going to get certain people that will not hand in their surveys and be more delinquent at higher rates. You will just, and guess what? Again, none of them will be Democratic constituencies. They won't be. They'll all be voters that have a much higher incident rate supporting Donald Trump. That's just the nature of the beast. With that in mind, we got to go. I hope this helped make more sense to you guys, to show you that and show you how it's done. Show you what Mark Harris is talking about. Put it up on the screen and show you in real time. There are certain voters, there's certain quotas that you just are going to have a hard time filling. And when you just do top line ones and they're not nested at all, you're going to have these Democratic heavy, in many cases, heavily Democratic groups that will fill them before the others get a chance or you're able to reach them. The abandonment rates. That's why the New York Times started adding people to their sample that don't complete their interview. Because when they went back and looked, they could see they were disproportionately Trump voters. And even though they still would have been wrong, had they added those interviews in 2020, they at least would have been closer. The results would have at least been somewhat defendable or a little bit more defendable. Because Trump voters abandon surveys. Harris voters don't. Biden voters don't. Trump voters do. And they're already more difficult to reach. Now you're compounding this problem and getting them more difficult to complete. That's why I tell you guys out there, if you're a Trumper and you're constantly like complaining about the polls, don't hang up on the poll. Take the poll. If you get text and you know it's a legitimate poll, take the poll. Because you're only hurting yourself. I know you look at pollsters like they're pieces of shit, like the media. I know, because they are. I don't think we're as bad as slip and fall lawyers or anything. No offense to good slip and fall lawyers. You know what I mean. Lawyers in general, actually. Actually, starting to think that slip and fall lawyers are the most honorable ones among some of these guys. Prosecutors are the worst. They are. Where's the community of prosecutors denouncing Jack Smith? Non-existent. Alvin Bragg, non-existent. Even though they know it's wrong. You're worse than us. You ruin lives. We just pull races. All right, so with that in mind, we got a boogie, woogie, woogie. All right? Don't forget, like I said, you're only cutting off your nose to spite your face. And at the end of the day, you're going to actually need those people to take that poll to make sure, like, it could be me. And then you're making my life more difficult. Am I right or am I right? All right, real quick before we go, I do have something really cool to tell you about. All right, and that is, of course, from the wellness company. And we'll talk about this more on Friday. But as we talked about, Paul, the world's getting more unpredictable by the day. Assassination attempts, seriously rumblings of potential upheaval, civil war, unstable stock markets. They're at highs one day, crashing the next. And now the looming threat of a bird flu. Do you know there's a bird flu summit coming in the month of October? It's eerily reminiscent of the Event 201 that foreshadowed the COVID pandemic. And get this, the first topic on the agenda is entitled Mass Fatality Management Planning. If that doesn't send chills down your spine, I don't know what will. Here's the good news. You don't have to be scared if you're prepared. That's my new saying. The wellness company created the medical emergency kit, and every home in America should have at least one. We have 2 going on 3. The other one's on its way. I don't know why it's not here yet, but I think Laura took too long to order it. Sorry, Laura, I think that's true. Not to throw you under the bus, but they're packed with life-saving meds like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics like amoxicillin, a Z-Pack, backed by experts like Dr. Peter McCullough, who we're also going to have on the show soon. Imagine this. No more frantic searches for a doctor. No more emergency waiting rooms. Just a few clicks, and the kit is delivered right to your front door. In times like these, having your medical emergency kit is not just a luxury, it's a necessity. So protect your family by preparing now. Links also in the description. Go to twc.health/TPP. Using that code TPP will save you $30. And don't wait until it's too late. Act now. Take control. Ensure your family and you are protected against whatever comes next. Again, that's twc.health/TPP. Use the code TPP. You'll get, at $30 off and free shipping. Sorry, I forgot about the free shipping part. All right. Friday is going to be a good day. We're going to start talking numbers. Okay? We're going to start talking results. Results, baby. Results. That's what everybody wants to see. Battleground Live at 5. Rich. 5. Don't miss the show again, Rich. 5 with Sean Parnell. Battleground Live at 5. We're going to talk about some of the polling, what I see, what I don't see, right? And then react to some of these other polls. All right? So it is what it is. I can't wait to talk to my buddy Sean. Great guy. For those of you who don't know, and as if this needs to be said because of the smear merchant pieces of crap in the media, Sean Parnell is one of the good ones, man. He's a good man, a good dude, a patriot, and a good friend. And I'm happy to be able to do a show every Wednesday. I look forward to it. All right. By the way, Sean's preparing. Fort Parnell is going to be a self-sustaining operation over there. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. All right. So speaking of which, Laura and I got to get over there. It's 2:07. I'm going to kick rocks. Don't forget to watch us on Rumble at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the public polling project is in the description. I see some of you guys already checked that out. Share it with your friends. Share it far and wide. All right. Go to your X accounts, whatever, and say, hey, look, you know, the polls are problematic to say the least. You want to see a project that's funded by the people that basically only has to worry about doing a good job for the people who contribute to it, then you should get on board and support it. All right. So that's always appreciated. Other than that, I think that's it. Don't forget, subscribe, like the videos if you like the videos. Welcome to some of the new people on Locals and on YouTube. We appreciate your support, being a member and a supporter. And you can definitely sign up at Locals for free to just check it out if you want. And that's right there, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. And I'll get you guys a new Bill, you were totally right. Where do you get the shirt? You were right. Laura's redoing some stuff. So it will look the same. Everything will look the same, but she's not done yet. But you were right. That link, she shut it down. You're totally right. I didn't even know she did. And then when when you asked, I was, what happened to the, and she's like, we're not using them anymore. We're doing something new. And okay. Same thing, just a different way to deliver it to you. All right. So we're out. That'll do it for us. Friday. Inside the Numbers, new numbers. Don't forget with Sean 5. Number love for you, folks. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Watch the data like a hawk. And remember, the data don't lie. People do.